Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Jim Leach Show here on 970 WMAY, the news and talk of Springfield. 15 days to go until Election Day, and that's something that probably fills the candidates with both a little bit of trepidation and probably a great deal of anticipation. It could be a grueling process here, so we appreciate it when the candidates are willing to take time out of their very busy schedules to sit down with us and to sit down face-to-face with each other to talk about the issues in their races, and we've got that planned all throughout this week, starting this morning in what is a very important race here in Sangamon County, the race for Sangamon County Circuit Clerk, the person who maintains the court records that can be so vital when you're dealing with divorces, with litigation, criminal cases. Those records have to be accurate. They have to be precise. And so the person in charge of that is a very important person here in Sangamon County. And we are joined this morning by both the incumbent of that office and his challenger this morning. Please welcome Sangamon County Circuit Clerk Tony Libri and challenger Kristen DiCenso. Thank you both so much for being here.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
And as I explained to both of you, this isn't a debate per se. Nobody's got a stopwatch out. We're not doing timed answers and rebuttals and things. It's a conversation, but we really want people to hear from both of you about this office and why it should be important to them. And I guess where I'd like to start is to have you, although our listeners, I think, probably are well acquainted with both of you by now, to have you just give a quick thumbnail sketch as to who you are, why you are either one in this office or two seeking this office, and what you hope to do on behalf of the voters and taxpayers of Sangamon County. And we'll begin with the incumbent, Tony Libri.
Thanks for having us here today. You could have had us at the 8 o'clock hour, by the way, but that's okay. And if I start coughing, forgive me. I'm trying to get over a cold here. I'm applying for the job as circuit clerk, and I would hope that the accomplishments that we have in the office, my employees and I, we make a great team. We've done some fantastic things, so I'm here applying for the job again, telling people about my candidacy. I have been the circuit clerk, and I would like to see it continue because we are right on the precipice of something that we started several years ago, and that is we have taken this office from the days where technology wasn't really thought of in the circuit clerk's office to where now it's a very big deal. The only way we're able to reduce expenditures is to automate and put to electrons as many things as we can, and I'm proud to say that we're doing that. We are one of the most technologically advanced circuit clerk's offices in the state, and I'm on the verge, or we are on the verge, of some really exciting things, and I would like to be a part of that because I think I can bring it home cheaper, quicker, faster, and more economically for all the taxpayers.
Kristen DiCenso, your reasons for seeking the office of circuit clerk.
I've been involved, and I've said this before, I've been involved behind the scenes in politics for about 10 years now, and I just thought it was time to come forward and get involved in a more public way. I think I can make a difference. This job fits my background and experience. In the past 10 years, I spent 9 of those years at the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. I managed a staff of 80 people in a $22 million budget, and we kept a lot of records, too. We sold all the hunting and fishing licenses for the state, the boat and snowmobile registrations. So I've overseen a large database, obviously, and that's what this is. We're keeping records. My experience fits this, and I just think that this is something that I would like to do and that I could make a difference in this office.
The name of the office is Circuit Clerk, and just the term clerk suggests that there are basic administrative functions that probably don't change a lot from year to year. A lot of this is set up in law as to how these records have to be maintained and things. So for the average voter who probably isn't suing anybody or being sued by anybody, maybe is in court for a divorce, but hopefully most likely not, for the average person, why does it matter who is sitting in that office? What difference really does it make if it's one of you or the other of you to carry out those administrative functions?
Well, to me, Tony's been in this office for 16 years, and, we've sat together several times now, twice last week, and, he's stated several times that he's on the verge of bringing some things up to speed technologically, and I don't know why it's taken 16 years to get some of these things up and running. Other counties are doing them, such as e-supervision. There's some online functions that other counties are already doing. So I have experience in this. We brought all the hunting and fishing and licenses online back in 2005. We started selling them over the counter just last year. So I have some experience in getting these operations up and running.
Tony, your response?
Sure. It's probably one of those mundane offices you don't think about. We're record keepers. That's what we do. And providing that service in a most economical way, as long as you're accurate, is the enduring theme of what we're doing there. We're trying to do the most with what we have. We are one of the most technologically advanced counties in the state of Illinois. We are on the cutting edge. My opponent doesn't understand that there are certain things that the court will allow in one county but might not allow in another county. As an example, the court does not allow us to have court supervision, mail-in court supervision here. We would love to have court supervision here, but that's a function of the court system, not us. We can only follow the rules of the court. They're the ones that mandate who can do what. Now, there are other technological things that are out there like e-filing and things like that that we are ready to do. We're just waiting for permission to do them.
You are running right now, Tony, commercials that talk about savings that you have effected in the office for taxpayers. I believe the figure you're using is $7 million. Can you elaborate on that number?
Sure.
Where does it come from? What does it represent?
Well, 1.9 million of that is in savings from we've eliminated with 10 positions, so to speak. So we have $1.9 million in savings, but we have $5.6 million in new monies generated. As an example, I was talking about this the other day to a reporter. Just passports alone, something that this office has never done before, has generated over $500,000 in income for the county. So when you add up programs like that, when you add up programs like new interest-bearing accounts that we created or an interest program that we created before, it was just passbook. You just stuck it in the bank, and whatever it earned, that's what it earned, the 1/10 of 1%. We actually created, with the help of local bankers, an investment program that was so successful that that program is now recommended by the statewide Circuit Clerks Association, and that program alone generated almost $500,000 in interest alone that we would not have received otherwise.
On the same topic of new revenues coming in, you recently put out a press release with the state's attorney, John Milhiser, about a program to be more aggressive in collecting fines and fees that have been written off as uncollectible that brought in more than $400,000 in doing that. But that's something that you had to go to hire a Chicago company to make that happen. Why did that job have to be outsourced? Why couldn't we go track those fines and fees down locally and keep that entire pie rather than having to give a portion of it back to another company outside the county to make that happen?
Great question. And again, let me remind you, we are merely the record keepers. We can make suggestions to the judiciary about how they do things, but again, we are not attorneys. We're the record keepers. The state's attorney will tell you, and we have worked well with all of the state's attorneys since I've been clerk, they will tell you that chasing somebody down for a traffic ticket that's 10 years old is probably not on their list of as high on the list as incarcerating rapists and murderers and things like that. The technology wasn't available before. The laws didn't allow us until recently to go to a collection agency, so to speak, and there's a very simple reason why. When the law says you collect a $100 fine, as an example, if you charge that to your charge card, we have to upcharge for your credit card because the law says you must charge $100, not $100 minus 2.5% or whatever the credit card's charging. So we were never able to go to a collection agency until recently when they passed the law that said their fee is on top of what our fee is. So now we've worked together. The state's attorney's happy with it. We're quite happy. And these fees that we're collecting are files that heretofore were thought of as uncollectible. Again, you have traffic tickets that are 10 years old from somebody that lives in Texas. You're not going to have a good collection rate. We're not, because we could threaten them to come to court, and they're just not going to come. But when a collection agency nationwide tags you, tag, you're it.
Kristen DiCenso, $7 million is an impressive number. What's your response to that?
Well, I think all savings is good. I don't think losing headcount is good, of course, when you're talking about losing jobs. But, I question those numbers a little bit because some of these things are not set up by the Circuit Clerk's office as far as fees and things like that go. But any savings is good. I can't bash Tony for saving money. That's that's ridiculous.
Well, you questioned headcount, and let's talk about that aspect of the office a little bit. Are there, in your view, sufficient people to do the job in reducing those number of bodies there? Has that impacted the service that taxpayers and voters get from the Sangamon County Circuit Clerk's office?
I've heard from lots of people, attorneys, the general public, that there are lines at the Circuit Clerk's office. It's not as user-friendly as it should be. I have said that I think we should offer some evening hours and some weekend hours. I think we have to adjust to what working people do. I work 8 to 4:30, so for me to get down and pay a fine, should I have one, during the lunch hour would be difficult. I'd have to take time off work to do that. And I think Tony would agree with that as well. He said last week in one of our joint meetings that, weekend hours or evening hours would cost an additional $80,000 a year. But there are security guards there. I think if you work with everyone and create some sort of flexible schedule, this is possible. Anything's possible. We've done, we made enormous changes at DNR as far as flex scheduling goes, and how to pay for things online. So I just think there's a lot of options open for. I don't think you should say anything is not doable because of finances. There's creative ways to do everything.
I know that on the rare occasion when I have had to go to the Circuit Clerk's office for some personal issue, it can be a challenge sometimes in a busy day, and I don't work close to the downtown area to get down there to be able to get to things. So flexible scheduling sounds pretty appealing to me, Tony.
We agree. I would love to be open more hours, but you have to remember the county building isn't even open on weekends anymore, other than this election time period, because the costs are so high. Just to open my office on Saturdays would require over $80,000 just in security. That's not counting Circuit Clerk employees. Now, we have employees that are on flex time and things like that. So we are capable of working extra hours. It's just that the funds aren't there to pay for that. And the Sheriff's Department is not going to spend an extra $80,000 just to open up the building just to satisfy me. When they can't even pay for food for the jail. You know what I'm saying? That's not high on their priority, me being open. I would love to be open. Give me the money. We'll be there.
You've got a state's attorney, a sheriff, a county board chair, all of your parties. Is this something you guys could work out together to say, hey, you know what, maybe there is some advantage, some benefit to having these offices be available and open to the public at a time that's more conducive to their schedules? I
have long been an advocate of a night court situation, things like that. And again, I am one voice out of many. There's a county board to consider. There are state statutes to consider. There are judges to consider. And so if we can get everybody on the same board or the same sheet of music, I would love that. But I will tell you that we have implemented programs to help alleviate that. I could tell you, as an example, we used to get probably, several hundred calls a day that averaged, when I first started, 14 minutes was the average phone call. Now that average phone call is less than 2 minutes. It's several hundred calls a day, but it's still under 2 minutes now. We used to get probably 1,400 people a day in that office. Now we're down to, on an average day, of less than 1,000 to 800 a day. So we have implemented things that allow people to do things online, to do things on the telephone, now to do things on their smartphone. So we're doing everything that we can. The things that we control, we're trying to make user-friendly and to keep people from having to come in that office.
Kristen DiCenso, real quickly, so we have to take a break here in just a moment, but traditionally, Sangamon County tends to lean pretty Republican in terms of its county-wide elected officials. Let's say you do win in a couple of weeks. Can you get the county board? Can you get the other office holders in the county to go along with this idea of expanded scheduling and potentially an expanded cost? And let me ask you, too, what do you make of that $80,000 estimate of expanded security to be able to implement what you're talking about with hours at nights or weekends?
Well, of course, I can work with anybody. When I came into the the Department of Natural Resources in 2003. I was one of the few new Democrats in the new administration there. Did I have to work with, a bunch of Republicans that had been there for years and years? Absolutely. Was I able to do that? You bet. My whole family is Republican. I've said this before. I'm still invited to Thanksgiving dinner, so I'm doing something right as far as getting along with people. And the $80,000 that this costs, I don't know that. I would have to take a look at that and see where else we could potentially cut back and make this happen. I think it's a very important issue.
Continuing our conversation this hour with the candidates for Sangamon County Circuit Clerk, and again, my heartfelt appreciation to candidates Tony Libri and Kristen DiCenso for taking an hour out of their busy schedules to sit down and talk to us. Once again, appreciate you being here this morning. I want to dive into something that seems to have set this race apart a little bit this year. Again, the Circuit Clerk's office, not necessarily one of the sexiest things we ever talk about in a political season, but this year we've had a few headlines coming out about comments, Tony, that you made actually a few weeks back that have been getting some play regarding problems in the office when you came in now 16 years ago, and how things have changed since then. And you have referenced there were issues of corruption, maybe even evidence disappearing, things along those lines at times. And it's been called into question a little bit as to whether or not maybe some of those issues had been exaggerated. Can you explain again what you were talking about and how you back up the things you were saying?
Well, a reporter came up to me and asked me some questions about, what things were like, what did we improve? And I said, well, you have to understand, we, among other things, and there was 2 interviews, by the way. You only heard part of one interview with that was in the paper. And if both were available, it probably would have answered a lot more questions. But to make a long story short, I had indicated that we had some problem employees during my first term. And it was they were doing we suspected some of them of doing some illegal things. We found one doing something illegal. That particular person was prosecuted. But it's very difficult back in the days when things weren't computerized. As an example, we suspected one person of misplacing files on purpose so that when that person would go to court, there'd be nothing to back up the ticket with, as an example, traffic tickets. Very difficult to prove. But we were able to fire the 4 people that we suspected of doing inappropriate things like that. The fact that we couldn't brag or that we didn't want to brag about it seems to be the issue here. Why didn't we talk about it? Well, why would I talk about something negative about the office? I want people to think positive things. The important thing is everybody was fired that should have been fired, and they were done within the limits of the law. And unless you were prosecuted and convicted, we can't release their names.
Were any of those incidents worthy of being forwarded on for prosecution?
Oh, yeah, and one person was prosecuted. But by the way, if you're a first-time, if it's the first time you've been convicted of a crime and it's just a little thing like misplacing a file or notifying the Secretary of State that this person should be cleared, his driving record, what's the penalty going to be for that? They're not going to serve time. It's going to cost us more to prosecute somebody like that and take months of investigation and thousands of dollars to prosecute it, where we just fired the person for other reasons. And that's why we did it that way.
And Kristen, you have raised questions then about this conversation that has gone on and the way these incidents were handled. What's your issue?
My main issue is that no one seems to remember anything about it. These are extremely serious accusations that Tony has brought up. John Schmidt says he doesn't remember it. Sheriff Neil Williamson says he...
Well, no, that's not accurate, because there was one person prosecuted, and that person's name and everything was printed in the paper.
Tony, you said there were gangs running out of the office. You said there was cocaine being stolen.
The person that was arrested was a gang member. And that's what we were talking about. And she was mentioned. So don't say that nobody knew anything, because they did.
That's what they're saying, Tony. That's not what I'm saying.
Read the article. The person's name was there, and the sheriff's department said, yes, we did work with him on that one. So, I mean, why do you say nobody knows anything? That's not accurate.
You said it was a complete and total mess, and that you came in and cleaned it up. And then, 16 years later, we hear about it. I find that fascinating, that no one, and no, they have said this. They were quoted in the paper as saying, we don't remember anything like this happening. When I submitted a letter just a couple weeks ago to State's Attorney John Milhiser and said, can you please look into this a little more? And he said, I'll forward this on to the sheriff. And the sheriff just said, these cases are closed.
That's exactly right. These people were fired.
Other than the case where the cocaine was stolen, you didn't refer any of these on for prosecution to the state's attorney?
We got advice from some of the police on how to try to catch somebody, but like I say, sometimes you just can't prove it. We suspected things. We knew we were right, but it's just difficult to prove it in a court of law. So we were able to find other reasons to fire those people for, and sure enough, those problems went away.
But you didn't refer. I mean, because that really would be the call of the prosecutor, right? Is to determine whether or not there's a basis for taking the case.
Well, if we
trial.
could have caught somebody again, you find somebody misplacing a file on purpose. How do you prove that? They could just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was an R instead of a D or something." What's the charge? You automatically misplaced a file. We knew what they were doing, but how do you prove that?
Official misconduct?
Again, how do you prove that?
But why is this just coming up now? I mean, why had we never heard about this before?
Well, because it wasn't anything to brag about. It's still not anything to brag about. It was just one part of a conversation that came up, and I happened to mention, not thinking it would be a news story.
Now, it is true that if you are dealing with employees in an office and there are problems that arise, not all of that is going to wind up being a case for the police or the prosecutors, correct, Kristen? I mean, some of these you'll just handle internally through firing people.
Absolutely, but I guess I'm just used to working at the state level, and we have an office of, the Inspector General. So, these things, when I would suspect something of going on in my office, I would refer it to someone who would, come and interview me and interview the employee and interview other staff. And, I guess it's just a concern to me that, you can have active gangs running in your office and have, no recourse for that. That's concerning to me that this is kind of standard operating procedure in the county building?
Oh, my, come on. This was 15 years ago. I didn't say it was standard operating procedure.
You said it took you 4 to 5 years.
You don't give me any credit for taking care of the problems.
You said
your two predecessors also raised some questions about this, though, and said, boy, to them, that's not the office that they remember. Carl Oblinger and Candy Trees both said, he's painting a picture here that doesn't sound familiar to us at all.
Well, and again, I never implemented them or implicated them. I just said that these people were there when I got there. I never mentioned Candy's Trees in that the whole interview. People are just putting 2 and 2 together and getting 100. And the only time I mentioned Carl Oblinger's name is when the attorneys or when the reporter said, "Who was the clerk before you?" I said, "Carl Oblinger." That's the only time I mentioned anybody's name. I never said those two ran a terrible office. I've never said anything like that. Like I say, it's my opponent just using this, trying to make a story out of it. And quite frankly, if this is the best she's got, something that happened 15 years ago, then
Tony, this
I'm
was
pretty
your story.
confident.
This was not my story. This was your story.
Well, amen. But I mean, you're the one that's put it in 100% of your ads. I mean, your newspaper ads, your radio ads. This is all you got.
I think the claims you've made are a huge deal. This is
well, of course you do, because you're my opponent. That's what you're supposed to do.
Let's talk about management of the office today now. Whatever happened 15 years ago, would you both agree that it's a different office today than it was 15 years ago?
Of course.
I wouldn't know. I haven't managed the office for 15 years, enough. So I wouldn't know.
Let's look at the office today. We talked about the fact that there's been cost savings there. There's been a reduction in headcount. You've raised some concerns that maybe that's been too deep in the headcount. What's your assessment of the budget today in the Circuit Clerk's office? Is it adequate for the job? Should it be increased? Do we need more resources devoted to the operations of the Circuit Clerk's office?
For the amount of staff they have, 57 full-time employees and a total of 66 employees, it seems like a very small budget to me, actually. I'm used to working in bigger numbers, but what I managed before was a bigger operation. It was a statewide operation. It wasn't a county-wide operation. So, I know how tight budgets are. I saw my own budget at the state slashed, 9 years in a row. But I think you have to have a good relationship with your other county-wide elected officials and, your county board members to make that kind of headway. And I don't think Tony's had those relationships, at least as of late.
What would make you say that?
What would make me say that you haven't had those relationships as of late?
Yeah, I get along fine with my fellow county people.
You get along fine with your fellow Republicans?
Yes, I do.
Oh, well, there was a very, very public battle, over you being the county chairman.
Over a political operation. And they said from day one they support me for this office. But then again, these are things you're just creating to make it sound like there's something going on.
I'm making up you being
well, no,
booted
but
out of the
you just said that I don't get along with my fellow county elected officials and county board members.
Tony, they use very strong words to describe your management style. You had a seek and destroy management style.
Who said that?
Senator Sam McCann said that. That you were difficult to work with, that you used profanity. I mean, we can go back to these articles.
I don't remember
from March
Sam
and
McCann
April
saying that, but I think you'll find he supports me.
But there was, of course, during the whole changeover and transition to the party, there were people who did raise questions about your relationships, your interpersonal skills on those political issues. But what you're saying is that whatever disputes there were in terms of control of the party doesn't translate, it doesn't bleed over into the governmental operations?
You go back and read every newspaper article about that. Most of that was inside baseball stuff. A very small amount of people. We all left friends. We're all very happy with how it turned out. But I think you'll find if you read every article that was published about that, they all said they support me for circuit clerk and always have. So it's not an issue.
I think that's the deal that was probably made.
There was no deal made.
Tony, you step down as county chair, and we'll say that we support you as circuit clerk.
That's not the case.
Can you bolster that? Can you back that up to say that there wasn't, or that's just your conclusion on it?
You know, this inside baseball stuff, I'm hearing this line over and over, and I'm getting a lot of Republican support. I'm getting a lot of public Republican support. So, for Tony to downplay what happened and, reinvent himself as this, really nice guy that everyone really likes is laughable to me.
I want to come back to Kristen DiCenso's comment, though, that the current operating budget in the circuit clerk's office, quote, seems like a small budget to me, is what she said. Tony, I mean, would you like to have more money in your budget?
Sure. The county gives us about $2.4 million a year. That, quite frankly, is not necessarily enough to cover our just employee costs. So we have to generate those incomes from the other 5 funds that we are in charge of collecting. And that's how we're able to do it. Now my opponent claims that she's qualified for this job because she ran a much larger office. Well, quite frankly, when I was in Afghanistan, I was in charge of 18,000 employees and had a $500 million budget. So, I mean, if it's merely numbers of employees and numbers of dollars that make you a better manager, then I just blew her experience away. But I don't talk about those things. It's a much different office. Well, because you're the one that bringing it up. My goodness.
If I'm going to establish my experience, you try
Well, then why can't I establish mine?
You are. Who said you aren't?
And you'll find that no matter what I do, my opponent doesn't like it.
You've been there for 16 years. I would hope that you know the ins and outs of this office. You've been there quite a while.
One other quick note related to budget and expenditures, and it came up during your Journal Register editorial board conversation, questions that were raised about some of the expenditures, a vehicle allowance, you get county assistance for your cell phone. Are those expenses that are out of line? I mean, they're small in the context of the overall budget, but you have no problem with taking those monies.
No, I mean, it's a cost of doing business. I don't understand why paying a portion of a phone bill is a big deal. I don't get a vehicle given to me. If they want to give me a vehicle to use, I'll take it.
They pay a portion of it, because you just have the one cell phone. They pay a portion of your phone bill?
Yeah, they give me some money every month.
$80 a month.
Okay, all right. Kristen, do you have a problem with those expenditures?
Of course. I gave up my state cell phone over a year ago because I have unlimited text and minutes and data on my plan. So why should the state have to pay me to, use their cell phone for work? I think that's ludicrous. As far as, the $7,800 a year he gets to drive to work, come on. That's insane.
Well, if that's all I did, I could see that, but that's not the case.
We're just about out of time here. I want to give you each a chance to have one final statement to the constituents and the voters who are listening this morning. Tony, we'll start with you.
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been proud to be your circuit clerk for a number of years now, and I am proud of the record of accomplishments we have. I will gladly answer any questions you might have of me, and because I like talking about what we have done in that office. You ask attorneys, you ask the people that come to our office, we are as efficient as we are allowed to be by the courts and based on the budget that we have. It's a mundane office, and we are very happy to have a smile on our face, to do your work completely, accurately, and quickly, and we're happy to do that because we're public servants. Again, as I said at the beginning of the show, I'm applying for the job. I realize that every 4 years I have to convince the public to vote for me. I have to give them a reason to do that. And if you look over the accomplishments that we've had, we've reduced cost, we've reduced employees, we've increased the quality of work. We've increased the work per file. We are doing more for less, and I would think that that's the kind of person you would want in office when you go to Election Day. So I appreciate your support.
Kristen DiCenso?
Thank you for having me. And I have to say that this experience has been one of the most positive of my life. Getting out there in the community and meeting people, and it's not the easiest thing to talk about yourself. As someone new in politics, it's not. I probably don't do that the best. Map out my accomplishments and what I've done, and what a hard worker I am. But I just think it's time for some changes at the county-wide level. There are no county-wide elected females. This county's 52% women. I just think I have a lot to add to this position. I think I would be an asset to the Circuit Clerk's office. I think I could bring some innovation and some new ideas and just a new energy to that office.
Challenger Kristen DiCenso, incumbent Tony Libri, candidates for Sangamon County Circuit Clerk. Thank you both again for your time this morning.
Thank you.